All right, so you want to dive into the Kabbalah?
Not just like the historical stuff, you're
Mhm.
interested in its potential as like a living system.
Okay.
And we're looking at Dion Fortune's The Mystical Qabalah.
And she calls it the yoga of the West,
Okay.
specifically designed for the modern person.
It's like she's saying the West needs its own system
Yeah.
for spiritual exploration. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, it's a common question, isn't it?
How can ancient wisdom still be relevant to
Yeah.
our lives today?
Fortune tackles this head on,
Okay.
framing Kabbalah as a living tradition
Think of a river.
that stays a river, even as it's fed by different tributaries.
I like that.
It keeps evolving, but the core remains the same.
Yeah.
Does that mean anyone can just add anything to it, though?
Not exactly.
Fortune emphasizes testing new ideas.
Against those core principles to
Wow.
ensure they genuinely fit.
It's about balance.
Honoring the tradition while allowing it to adapt.
To new knowledge and experiences.
Otherwise, it becomes a museum piece.
Okay, so it needs to be a living tool.
And speaking of tools, the tree of life.
Is definitely a big one in Kabbalah.
Right.
What I found interesting is that Fortune says,
It's not just a diagram to be studied.
yeah,
It's something you use.
how do you make sense of that?
That's where Fortune's approach gets really cool.
She compares it to science.
But in reverse,
Go for it.
instead of building up from observations
You start with the abstract principles represented.
by the symbols on the tree
Right.
and analyze them.
She calls it mental technology.
Imagine it as a tool to unlock deeper levels of consciousness.
A tool to unlock deeper levels of consciousness.
You've definitely got my attention there.
She mentions that rabbis believed.
These symbols originated with angels.
Right.
Whether you take that literally or not.
It definitely suggests we're dealing with knowledge
Yeah.
beyond human understanding.
And not just passively receiving that knowledge.
It's about actively exploring it.
Okay.
That's where the yoga of the West aspect.
Comes into play.
Fortune talks about meditation,
And cyclic tension.
implying we need to engage with these symbols.
On a much deeper level, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
It's not just intellectual,
It's about engaging with them
right?
to unlock personal transformation.
Which seems to be a big part of Fortune's view.
Yeah.
But to apply it.
We need to understand the individual components of the tree. Right?
Right. And that brings us to the 10 Sephiroth.
Each sphere represents a different principle,
A different force.
but Fortune cautions against.
Getting lost in memorizing correspondences.
Okay.
She wants us to grasp the essence.
Of each sephira
And she gives some fantastic example.
to illustrate them.
I was floored by her description of Kether.
The first sephira.
Forget the old man in the sky.
Yeah.
She describes it as the pure potential.
That existed before the Big Bang.
Now that's how you make something abstract,
Right.
relatable.
And she doesn't stop there.
Fortune brings it down to earth.
By showing how each sephira plays out
Okay.
in our everyday world.
For example,
She suggests that Bina
which is often linked to Saturn,
could be the reason behind why established institutions,
can be so resistant to change.
which is a tendency we see everywhere, right?
Exactly.
And on the flip side,
She connects cheesed
associated with Jupiter
to the idea of benevolent leaders.
and organizations
It's fascinating to see how she makes these connections
between the abstract Sephiroth.
and the forces we experience in our lives.
What I find really interesting is that
She uses both positive and negative examples.
to illustrate them,
Yeah.
she's making it very clear that
No, Saphira is inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's about balance.
absolutely
Even cheesed with its associations of generosity and compassion.
can become detrimental if it's taken to an extreme.
Too much generosity without boundaries
Right.
can prevent necessary change and growth.
So it's not about labeling them.
It's about understanding the forces at play and striving for that equilibrium.
Another thing that struck me about Fortune's work,
Is her focus on the power of symbols?
she talks about ancient civilizations using them.
Almost like a language to
Wow.
communicate with subtle forces.
Almost like they were building a mental bridge.
It does make you wonder why symbol.
What is it about them that makes them so powerful?
Fortune suggests it's because our conscious minds.
Struggle to grasp abstract concepts directly.
Okay.
Symbols act as that bridge,
Between our conscious and subconscious minds
allowing us to access deeper levels of understanding.
that might otherwise remain hidden.
And she gets very specific.
Talking about tools, colors, even incense.
They can be used to connect with the energy
Oh.
of each sephira.
It's like fine-tuning ourselves to
Yeah.
a specific frequency using these symbols.
Have you ever experimented with that?
It's definitely a fascinating area.
And that connection isn't passive.
Fortune suggests that it can influence our reality.
Okay.
This is where the practical application of Kabbalah,
Comes into focus.
it becomes about using these symbols,
To influence our inner world.
which in turn can influence the world around us,
It's not just about intellectual understanding.
Yeah.
It's about applying that knowledge.
to create tangible change.
That's a powerful concept.
But it's not all sunshine and roses, is it?
right.
Fortune doesn't shy away.
From the darker aspects of Kabbalah either,
We've got to talk about the Qliphoth
which represent the shadow side.
of the Sephiroth.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those?
The Qliphoth.
This is where things get really interesting.
And potentially challenging.
The Qliphoth are a reminder.
That any force, even a positive one,
Can become destructive.
if we don't understand or control it,
Okay.
they embody the potential for things to go awry.
To become unbalanced.
And that ties into a core principle.
We see across many mystical traditions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The importance of balance.
Just like in physics, every action
Right.
has an equal and opposite reaction.
The Kabbalah gives us a framework.
To understand these opposing forces
The Sephiroth and the Qliphoth.
and to work toward equilibrium.
Exactly.
And that understanding is crucial,
If we want to work with these forces,
consciously and safely,
so it's a delicate dance.
as we're navigating these potent
You're
forces.
trying to find that sweet spot
Yeah,
between the light and shadow aspects.
of each sephira.
It sounds a little intimidating, to be honest.
How do we even begin to approach that?
Well, that's where Fortune's emphasis.
On practical application comes into play again.
Okay.
She doesn't just leave us.
With these grand abstract ideas
She provides tools and techniques.
that we can use to start applying these principles to our own lives.
And that's what we'll explore.
in our next segment.
We'll delve into those practical applications
And discover how we can start using the Kabbalah.
as a tool for personal transformation.
Don't go anywhere!
We'll be right back.
So we're talking about finding that balance.
Between the light and shadow aspects of the Sephiroth,
Right.
and you mentioned that Fortune,
Provides us with some tools.
to help us do that.
Yeah.
What are some of those practical applications?
She suggests.
What are the most fundamental practices
Fortune emphasizes is meditation.
on the tree of life?
Imagine yourself visualizing each sephira.
Contemplating its meaning and feeling its energy
It's about connecting with these archetypal principles.
on a personal level.
So it's not just about intellectually understanding them.
It's about experiencing them directly
Exactly.
through meditation
Think of it as a way.
to build a relationship with each sephira
Yeah.
as you meditate
You begin to understand how these cosmic forces operate,
within you, how they influence your thoughts.
emotions and actions.
Precisely.
And that kind of self-awareness.
This is essential for growth
Okay.
and transformation,
It's about recognizing where we might be out of balance.
where we might be giving too much energy
Right.
to one sephira at the expense of others.
So for example, if someone's feeling scattered,
And indecisive. They might want to meditate on Gebra
the sephira associated with Mars
and focused action.
to cultivate more discipline and direction in their life.
That's a great example.
And remember, balance is key.
If that same person focuses too much
Right.
on Gebra's energy without cultivating its opposite,
Cheesed, which represents compassion and mercy.
they might become overly rigid and controlling.
So it's about finding that middle path.
That sweet spot where the opposing forces are in harmony.
Absolutely.
And meditation on the tree of life.
It can be a powerful tool
Okay.
for achieving that balance.
Are there other practical applications?
Fortune highlights, besides meditation,
She also talks about the power of using symbols,
to work towards specific goals.
Yeah.
You touched on this earlier.
how symbols act as a bridge between our conscious and subconscious minds,
Like using the color green.
or rose incense to connect with Netzach
The Sephira of Venus.
when you're working on a creative project,
That's a great example.
by surrounding ourselves with symbols.
Associated with a particular Sephira.
We're essentially aligning ourselves with its energy
Inviting it to flow into our lives.
and support our intentions.
It's almost like creating a resonance.
A sympathetic vibration that attracts those energies
I like how you put that.
we're trying to cultivate
It's about working in harmony.
with the subtle forces of the universe.
This is all incredibly fascinating.
But I have to admit,
Part of me feels a little overwhelmed.
the Kabbalah is such a vast and complex system.
It's hard to know where to even begin.
I hear you.
And Fortune acknowledges that.
She emphasizes that the Kabbalah is a lifelong path.
Not a quick fix.
Bye-bye.
It's about consistent effort.
And exploration over time.
So we don't need to have it all figured out right away.
Not at all.
Even seasoned practitioners.
Constantly learning
Right.
and discovering new depths to these teachings.
That's actually quite reassuring to hear.
So where would you suggest someone who's new to all of this?
Even begin.
What would be a good first step?
On this journey into the world of Kabbalah.
Reading Dion Fortune's?
The Mystical Qabalah is a fantastic starting point.
Good.
It's a foundational text.
That lays out the core principles.
In a clear and accessible way,
It's definitely a dense read.
but incredibly rewarding.
I found myself highlighting passages on almost every page
It's a book you can return to again and again.
and always find new insights.
But beyond reading
I'd say the most important thing?
is to approach this with a spirit of curiosity
Okay.
and openness,
Don't be afraid to experiment
to try different techniques.
and to see what resonates with you
It's about finding your own personal path.
through this intricate forest of symbols and correspondences.
Exactly.
And remember,
You don't have to do this alone.
okay,
There are countless resources available
from books and websites to workshops,
and online communities
connecting with others who are exploring these paths.
can be incredibly enriching and supportive.
It's always helpful to have fellow travelers.
On the journey.
Right.
Speaking of journeys
We've talked about the light and shadow aspects of the Sephiroth.
and the importance of balance.
But Fortune doesn't shy away from exploring.
The shadow side in more depth, does she?
That's right.
She dedicates a whole chapter to the Qliphoth.
Those averse Sephiroth.
That can often feel a little unsettling.
The Qliphoths are an important part.
Of the Qwalistic system.
They're not meant to be feared or avoided,
Okay.
but understood and integrated.
Why is it so important?
To understand the shadow side
Why not just focus on the positive aspects?
of the Sephiroth,
Because the shadow is an integral part.
of wholeness.
Just as we can't have light without darkness.
We can't fully understand the Sephiroth
Right.
without acknowledging their Qliphotic counterparts.
It's like trying to understand the concept of up.
Without acknowledging the concept of down,
Exactly.
they're intrinsically linked.
And just as each Sephira represents,
Particular energy or principle.
so too does each Qliphoth.
Right.
But the Qliphoth represent those energies.
In their distorted or unbalanced forms.
They show us what happens when those forces are misused.
Misunderstood or taken to extremes.
And this isn't just about personal shadow work, right?
The Qliphoth also play out on a larger scale,
Absolutely.
influencing societal structures and collective patterns.
Think about it.
Wherever there is power, there is the potential
Right.
for its abuse.
Wherever there is love.
There is the potential for jealousy and possessiveness.
These are all expressions of the Qliphoth.
Those shadow aspects of otherwise positive forces.
So how do we navigate that?
How do we engage with the Qliphoth?
Without being consumed by them.
That's a crucial question.
And one that we'll delve into deeper.
After the break,
We'll explore how understanding the Qliphoth,
can actually help us
a
cultivate.
greater balance and wisdom in our lives.
Stay tuned.
So we're talking about the Qliphoth.
The shadow side of the Qliphotic system.
Right.
And I have to admit, it's a bit intimidating.
But you said that understanding the Qliphoth,
Can actually help us.
find greater balance and wisdom.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, it's about recognizing that the Qliphoth
While potentially destructive.
aren't inherently evil.
Okay.
They're like the undertow in the ocean.
A natural force that can be dangerous.
If we're unaware or reckless,
Right.
but something we can navigate.
With knowledge and skill.
So it's more about understanding these shadow forces.
And learning to work with them consciously
Exactly.
rather than trying to eliminate them altogether.
Because the more we try to suppress or deny the shadow,
The more likely it is to emerge
right,
in unexpected and potentially destructive ways.
hey,
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
it's just going to pop up somewhere else with even more force.
Yeah.
So how do we start to understand
And integrate the Qliphoth.
into our understanding of the tree of life
One way is to examine the specific Qliphoth.
associated with each Sephira?
Okay.
For instance, we talked about cheese.
The Sephira of mercy and compassion.
Right.
Its Qliphothic counterpart is often associated.
With tyranny and overindulgence.
So instead of offering balanced compassion.
It becomes about giving without boundaries,
Right.
which can ultimately harm both the giver and the receiver.
Precisely.
And by understanding this shadow aspect of cheese,
We gain a deeper appreciation.
for the importance of setting healthy boundaries.
Of practicing discernment in our compassion.
Yeah.
wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
It's like that old saying, everything in moderation.
Even our positive qualities can become destructive
Right.
if they're not kept in check.
This is making me think about something else.
Fortune emphasizes.
The importance of Malkuth,
How does that final Sephiroth
representing the physical world.
fit into all this talk about balance and the shadow side,
Well, Malkuth is where the rubber meets the road,
where all the energies of the tree of life
both light and shadow.
manifest into concrete form?
Okay.
It's the realm of our physical experiences.
Their actions and their consequences.
So it's like the stage where the play of light and shadow unfolds.
Exactly.
And Fortune reminds us that Malkuth,
Is not separate from the rest of the tree?
it's intimately connected to the higher Sephiroth,
Okay.
constantly receiving and reflecting their influences.
Which makes sense when you think about how our thoughts and emotions,
Influenced by the Sephiroth,
right,
ultimately shape our actions and experiences.
in the physical world.
Precisely.
And this is where personal responsibility comes in,
Okay.
by understanding the dynamics of the tree of life.
The interplay of light and shadow
We empower ourselves to make more conscious choices.
to create a more balanced and fulfilling experience of Malkuth,
So it's about recognizing that we're not just passive recipients of fate.
but active participants in the unfolding drama of our lives.
Exactly.
And that's an incredibly empowering realization.
The Qabalah, with its intricate map of consciousness,
Gives us the tools to become conscious creators of our reality.
it's like we're holding a map to our own potential.
And it's up to us to choose which paths to explore,
Which landscapes to cultivate?
and to do so with awareness, wisdom.
And a deep respect for the power of the forces we're engaging.
This has been an incredible journey.
We've covered so much ground.
From the core principles of the Kabbalah
Right.
and the symbolism of the Tree of Life
For the importance of balance, the shadow side.
and the role of personal responsibility
It's clear that Dion Fortune's The Mystical Qabalah,
is a book that can be revisited again and again.
revealing new layers of meaning with each reading.
Absolutely.
What's the key takeaway you hope our listener?
Is walking away with today
I think the most important thing to remember,
is that the Kabbalah is not just an ancient system of knowledge
it's a living, breathing tradition
that offers profound insights into the nature of ourselves.
and the universe.
It's a path of self-discovery transformation.
And ultimately, a journey back to wholeness.
Beautifully said.
And for anyone listening who's feeling called,
To dive deeper into these mysteries
we encourage you to pick up a copy.
of Dion Fortune's The Mystical Qabalah.